I have 8 random questions here. You'll pick 3 numbers, and whatever you pick, that's where we start.
Okay. 3.
Number 3 is my lucky number. It's wrap gifts. What is the most memorable wrap gift you've either received or given?
Oh my gosh, most memorable. I just did a film called Oh What Fun, which is a ensemble Christmas comedy. And our lovely writer bought me a Christmas decoration, which has all the family that it's about are called the Clousters. And it has each one of us huddled together with Santa Claus hats on and scarves. And you can put it on your tree as a Christmas decoration. I thought that was pretty neat.
A usable keepsake.
Yes, exactly.
A nice way to have that memory.
Attractive and practical.
I'll take it. That's always the best wrap gift there.
Yes.
All right, so we got a number 3. What is your next one now?
Oh, my next number? Number 8.
Number 8 is new skill. If you could learn about a different profession or pick up a new skill through a role, what would you pick and why?
New skill. Oh gosh, it would have to. I really like doing physical work, so I've loved doing martial arts in the past. So maybe it would be something to do with that. Maybe judo or something. Ooh. I mean, why not?
Yeah, really.
Useful in everyday life as well.
Okay, yeah.
You never know when you need your judo skills. That's what I love about the job. You get all these. You become all right at a lot of things. Because you never quite go totally in depth. So.
I mean, I could kind of see that, but all right is just so far beyond all of us who just sit and experience it through your hard work.
You just got to make it look as though you know what you're doing.
I always think, editing.
Yeah, exactly. The power of editing, exactly.
In all honesty, though, anyone who can learn another language for a role, that's something that my brain can't compute, and I'm in awe of it.
Oh, well, even if it's just the individual lines that you have
still
to
counts.
Speak. It's so good.
Still counts. All right, you have one last pick. What is your final number?
Number 4.
All right, number 4, this is a meaty acting question. This is one of my favorites. It's favorite, least favorite. I want to know your single favorite part of the acting process, meeting your co-stars, putting a costume on, something like that. But then also not necessarily your least favorite, but just a part of the process where you still see room to grow for yourself and you're excited to tackle it.
I often think about that, what is the thing that I actually really like about this profession? Do you know what it is? It's meeting people, and it's the people that you meet from across the world in so many different countries, and you get, for that time that you're working on something, you've really become very close to people. You form these strong attachments, and I think that's one of my favorite aspects of it.
I like that. All right, now I need the least favorite.
And then room to grow. That would probably be not taking it home with me. Ooh. And not getting into a negative spiral when I get home and worrying about what happened in the day.
Ooh, I understand that all too well.
Yes.
What is the thing you turn to that is most likely to snap you out of it?
Snap me out of it. Watching a bit of TV. TV's great.
Yes,
you just put it on, doesn't matter what it is, it'll distract you. Having something nice to eat, that helps, because often you're hungry, which is why you're getting, grumpy. Probably along those 2 things. And then probably getting some sleep. That will help.
Okay, yeah. All three things right there, all too relatable.
Easy,
I get it.
Yeah, easy to execute.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new edition of Collider Ladies Night that I'm very excited about, because I have Felicity Jones on the show for the Brutalist. First, I will say huge congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What is the movie you saw, the personal experience you had, the performance you saw, whatever it may be that first made you say to yourself, I absolutely have to be an actor?
Well, it was definitely watching Samantha Morton in her early work. Morven Caller, I remember, made such a huge impression on me. And I think it was her, she just was so real, and her naturalism and her commitment. And she went to a kind of drama group where she grew up, and I went to a similar one where I grew up, which was run by the same company. So I was always kind of looking at her, going, well, what's she doing? I felt like I had this affinity with her, and then just watched her performances grow. And everything she does is just, she's never phony. She never just takes an easy choice. She does interesting work. And yeah, there was something really punk about her as well.
I'm always here for a Samantha Morton reference.
Yes,
I feel like she consistently deserves more credit. Very
much. Yes.
I want to follow up on the drama group you just mentioned, because I always love hearing about someone's experience learning more about their craft. So having worked in that group, what was it about that group and the way that they explored acting that you think melded with how you like to learn and grow?
I think we had an amazing teacher who was called Colin Edwards, and he ran the group. And I think it was that he treated us, he took us seriously, even though we were probably, we started doing it when I was about 10 or 11. He'd bring plays to us. We'd talk about playwrights, talk about Pinter, and he would really give us a platform to feel like we had something to say. And that really has stayed with me, I think. And I think also it was fun. I met all these different children from, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, and we were all there because we love to do a little bit of acting.
Oh, what a beautiful experience to have so early on. It's so important.
Very special, yeah.
So the next step now, there's a particular quote that I read from you that I wanted to ask about. You mentioned that after university, you decided, I'll just throw myself in, I'll start auditioning, and if it doesn't work out, I'll have to think of something else. And it was making me wonder, what was the very first thing that happened after university that made you stop and say to yourself, like, you know what, this is working, I don't have to think of something else?
Well, yeah, that makes me sound very pragmatic, doesn't it? Whether I actually would have been able to do that. But I think it was when I was cast. I remember it was a really intense auditioning process it was Northanger Abbey. I feel like we must have done about 4 or 5 rounds of auditioning. And then when I got the call and said, we'd like you to do it, I think that gave me a lot of confidence, because it was in that first year just after I'd finished university. So it was John Jones who was directing it. And I think having that feeling that, actually I might be able to make a living out of this, that then gave me the push to keep going. Because it's almost like you just need one little bit of, one job, one little sign of hope, and then you can kind of galvanize and keep going.
So true. And so many more followed. To touch on some of the earliest credits, I've got 2 broader questions for you to name whatever you'd like. The first one I wanted to ask was, of all of your earliest shows and films, which would you credit with teaching you the most about what you valued in an on-set environment? I think you've got to have a bit of humor. I mean, you're sometimes there, there's long hours and people are away from home, and literally this film that we just shot was such a lovely group of people. And I think you've just got to make sure that you keep a few jokes going and you don't take everything too seriously. Otherwise, it can all get a little bit heavy. I'll veer off the path here briefly to follow up on that as it pertains to The Brutalist, because obviously this is some very heavy and serious material.
We were cracking jokes all the time on The Brutalist.
When you are kind of, consumed in a story in a world like this, what can you reach for to break through when you need it?
Well, actually, with The Brutalist, Brady is really into his restaurants and food, and after most days, we'd get a text and he'd say, if you want to come out, we're all meeting here. And so it felt like we were part of something. And it felt like, no matter what you'd done in the day or what had happened, you had this feeling of community really at the end of the day. And it's sort of, there's nothing like just all eating together and kind of makes everything feel
He's also like
human.
The best leader ever.
Yeah, he really is.
Like between what you and Guy told me earlier and what Adrien said, I'm like, we need more people at the helm that operate like he does.
Yeah, he's got a very natural way. I think he's been acting for such a long time. He's had the experience of being on so many film sets. He's really worked out how he wants to do it. It's like, I want to be like want to do it this way, and you feel that confidence.
You feel it in the finished product too.
Yeah.
Going back to my little roadmap here, the other broader early project question I had was kind of, I guess, which early show and film made you feel seen the way you wanted to be seen in the industry, where you did something and you're like, yes, this well represents what I want the industry to know that I'm capable of?
That's so good. That's such a good question. I know, because you can do things where, I've definitely had that where you're doing parts and work and you're like, well, it's not really representative of kind of what I want to say. I think definitely Like Crazy was quite a moment of feeling, I very much had wanted to do that kind of work, that, I loved watching independent film growing up. And so that film suddenly felt like, I'm sort of doing what I was planning to do. And that's, probably with that film, it felt like everything sort of came together in the right way, I guess.
I was planning to ask this question for that film, and now that you brought it up, it is a good fit. What would you say is the biggest difference between the types of opportunities that were coming your way before that film and then the types of opportunities that were coming your way after it was released?
Well, that film really was the first time that I came to the States was because of that film in many ways. And, I'd started off in England and I'd got to know, you have to go and meet all the casting directors, and I'd done that in Soho and I guess felt like I had a pretty good footing. And then I came to the States and I had to start all over again. So it was then in a different way. I was in a car this time, driving around and getting to know everyone. But in a way, Like Crazy opened the world up for me in many ways. And, I didn't anticipate that I would ever do this much traveling and have this life. And that film was very much the gateway.
There's another question I had about that movie, because I am endlessly fascinated by improvisation and how people are able to do it in a multitude of respects. And there was one quote I found. You had mentioned that you were emphasizing the importance of learning the fact that when you're doing improvisation, you have to fall off the tightrope sometimes. And when making Like Crazy, I'm wondering if you could give me an example of each. Do you remember the very first time you fell off that tightrope and what it felt like? But then also, can you tell me the first time you fell off the tightrope and said to yourself, that was right and I'm confident in my craft?
Well, I'm still figuring that out now. I think it's that if you try and do everything perfectly, it's often very boring creatively. And, if you feel like, I'm hitting all the right beats and I'm saying all the lines in the right way, in the right order, it's a bit mechanical. And actually, you have to feel it and you have to just let go. And sometimes that's the hardest moment, when you just go, right, whatever happens is going to happen. And then something really interesting might occur, rather than trying to control every minute. It's a bit like life, isn't it? More you try and control, the less interesting it is, probably.
It's scary to do. That's kind of why, I obsessively prepare. Then I can just, sit back and know I have, a foundation.
You've got your map.
To stand on, and then I can at least listen. Speaking of my map, one of the next things I had to hit with you was how you ventured into franchise filmmaking. And I was trying to refresh myself about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I did really want to ask this because I couldn't quite piece the details together as well as I usually can. For that one, I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest difference between what you expected from that opportunity and maybe that character specifically, and what you ultimately got from it?
Well, I think with, you have to, when you see a film and you see the part, you have to be, okay, I definitely want to do that and want to tell that story, and then whatever happens, happens. And I just liked, even though she wasn't in it that much, I just kind of liked her vibe. I had an idea for the look, and I wanted her to have this dark brown hair and this fringe, and it, I think I only probably shot on that film. So I think I was in New York for ages, because and then you just appear when you do your little bit. So I think I only shot 6 days, but felt like I was in New York for about 3 months, which was quite fun, which is no bad thing. So, I had a good time. I had a really good time doing it.
I'll take a good time. Good time and good vibes.
Yeah, and
sometimes that's all you need.
And it's so nice having this, such a different muscle, having these enormous sets suddenly that take hours to get from one side to the other. I quite like having that change from something very intimate.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So obviously from that one, I got to jump to Star Wars, and I'm still a very big believer that Rogue One was one of the very best Star Wars movies ever made. I adore that film. When you are making a commitment to such a big franchise like that, what are some different things you have to consider to decide that it is, worth it to you and it speaks to you creatively that maybe you don't have to consider when it's not part of a franchise?
Well, that's what was so special about Rogue One. It was so easy. I thought it's this great character who's an amazing fighter, who's at the center of the story, who's, doing wonderful things. So it was such a no-brainer. It wasn't a compromise. Back in the day, you'd read scripts and the female part would be such a yawn, and you'd think, God, why is there any point doing that? But with Rogue One, it was like, oh, yeah, definitely. When do I start?
Oh, so good.
Yeah, it was a pretty special one.
Before I jump into the Brutalist full force, I have to ask you one more question about another project, because the thing that I like asking about often is an artist's relationship with awards and nominations, because it's not why you do the work, but it can be very important depending on, where you're at in life and your career. So when you got your nomination for The Theory of Everything, what did it mean to you at the time?
Well, it's I guess there's something that's nice about it, that you feel like your peers, that other people are seeing your work and enjoying it. I guess on that level, it's quite nice. But, your sort of sensible self comes and gets, that's not what it's about. It's not about that. And you can't make that the goal, really, because I feel who knows, you don't know. You don't know where the zeitgeist is going to go. You just keep coming back to, what the thing that I do love doing is creating these funny characters and putting them in the world. So as long as I can keep doing that, then that's good, really. And everything else is the cherry on the cake.
And you very much are. So The Brutalist is just, I don't know, I guess filled with an especially large amount of very exciting creative challenges, or at least from my perspective, it seems to be. So when you first signed on for the role, what would you say were some of your biggest burning questions for Brady to kind of start to wrap your mind around the story he wanted to tell and how he would go about telling it?
Well, I think I had a strong sense that he would do something interesting, having seen his previous work and how careful he was. I mean, even when he was acting, he seemed to work with the greatest auteurs in the world, from one to the next. And then you could see from having done 2 of his films just how important each film is to him. So I knew there was so much promise that when we chatted, we chatted about so many different things. We'd actually known each other socially in our 20s. So it was really nice to see him again, having not seen him for some years. But I just felt instinctively there was such emotional intelligence in the writing of the script, and there was such ambition in it that I knew that it would be interesting in some way. I knew that it would be distinct, and that's what is so key, particularly now, is making things that are distinctive in some way.
Instincts were spot on in that respect. So digging into your character now, when we first meet her in the film, it's well into the film, and we've had a significant amount of time to kind of build up in our own minds what this moment of their reunion would be like. So I am curious, what was it like, or maybe what kind of conversations did you have with Brady in terms of how big her reaction would be and why she's so focused on some particular aspects of life versus others?
Yeah, it's definitely increases the pressure and the stakes when you don't appear until halfway through the film. So you don't want to disappoint when you do finally arrive. But in many ways, part of the character so much of it was building it through her voice, and you hear her so much in that first half. I've talked about it as though she sort of is haunting László in many ways. And so we feel like we know her. And then obviously it's quite a shock when we meet her and we see the effect that malnutrition has had on her, which László isn't expecting. And very quickly, I felt that with Erzsébet, you feel her humanity, and there's just a toughness, there's a strength of mind, and it's someone who, no matter what she has been through before, and you feel she's been through great trauma, that she is totally committed to making it work for her and her family, and that whatever's gone before, she in many ways just wants to look forward. She's choosing to not look backwards in some ways at that point that we meet her, and she's very pragmatic, and she's going to do what it takes to make it work, and she wants to build a new life and a foundation.
Given the focus on her forging forward, I'm curious to hear your answer to this. What was it like figuring out how much of her relationship with László would reflect what their relationship was like prior versus how it needed to morph given what they've both been through and also their new life now?
Well, I feel there's something in the photograph that you have in the intermission that gives you a little clue as to their former life. It gives you a window into their profound connection, but also a certain amount of innocence. And then what you realize is that in many ways, when they're reunited, having not seen each other for 8 years, that they're starting again. They're having to recalibrate, they're having to get to know each other, they're having to rediscover that connection that they've dreamt about for so long. So it's not totally straightforward.
So true. I was thinking a lot about that photograph. It's just a fascinating experience to essentially be sitting there and staring at it for so long with the expectations that you had built from part one and then seeing how it actually comes to life in part two. It's a beautiful quality of the film.
Yeah.
This is the scene that I was most excited to ask you about because I think it is just absolutely phenomenally acted and shot. It's the dinner at the Van Buren house when she confronts him for what he's done to László. I feel like I could have spent this entire interview just talking about this one scene, but given the weight of what she's saying, the fact that it's so many like peak emotional moments, and then on top of that, it's all filmed in a single shot. What does that scene demand from you prep-wise that maybe all of the other really emotionally like heavy scenes in the film did not?
Well, it's definitely a scene that you're thinking about for a long time before you do it. And I remember we didn't really rehearse anything. The only thing I practiced when I first arrived in Hungary with Brady was I just wanted to walk through her entrance, just so I had a sense of the room that I was in and how the scene might unfold. But what you see on screen is pretty much what the first time that we did the scene. I mean, I think it was the first take that is used in the actual film. So a lot of it is, as actors, we're kind of in the moment. We don't quite know what's going to happen. So it has that electricity to it, but it was brilliantly written.
Oh my, that is something else. When you're doing something like that, are you aware at all of when the camera is on you? Because like one particular beat of that really fascinates me is that when she is saying that he raped him, the camera is on you, and I guess in my mind, I would have thought like anyone would cut to the reaction in the room when she says that, but like we're experiencing what it means to her to say it out loud, but we're also essentially getting their reaction via your eyes, and I just found that to be a fascinating and highly effective choice.
Yeah, I remember the camera just being there, and I did think, it's not moving. I'll just carry on, just keep going, whatever it takes. But it's an interesting decision. I guess Brady, it's his commitment to László and Erzsébet, really, to tell he's telling it through that. They hold it for him.
I didn't want to say that out loud, but you like took the words right out of my mouth. I thought that was such a smart choice there. So because, again, I loved singing Brady's praises and what he was able to accomplish with this film, because I've also heard a lot about how he's been able to make so much with minimal resources, or far less than one might imagine he had to shoot a movie like this. Is there any particular thing you remember him doing on set where, it might surprise people that you could do all of that with so little that maybe more sets out there would benefit from versus overspending and overusing?
Well, I think there's an amazing amount of scale that Brady has achieved in terms of where he puts the camera as well. Just between him and Lol, just their expertise on giving you that sense of scale, probably with very little, actually. That's what's quite extraordinary. And then with the score on top of that then almost makes everything so operatic. He's able to keep building something. But I think it's also the use of that location of the Carrara mines in Italy. Suddenly it gives you this enormous scope. And it is an American epic. He's making a story so much about America. And if you're telling a story about America, then you need scale.
We have hit the end of Ladies' Night, and every single Ladies' Night ends with this particular question. Nobody seems to like it, but I don't care because I think it's an important thing to think about. In this industry, everybody gives each other awards.
Defiance, that's very good.
Always. Everybody gives each other awards, and I think that is really good. I think we should keep doing that. But I find that nobody ever tells themselves good job as much as they should. So can you tell me something specific you accomplished in The Brutalist that you'll always be able to look back on and say, you know what? I am so proud of what I did there.
It's very good to do, because it's not always easy to do that, is it? God, it's so hard.
This is why I asked it.
I know, you don't want to seem really like, I thought it was great when I did.
Sometimes, though.
When I did this, it was amazing. I think probably with The Brutalist, it was one of the films that I've done where I just every time we started the scene, I just let it go. I didn't want, sounds a bit technical, but I wanted it not to be totally conscious. I wanted something else, I wanted it to be not to try and control every minute, just do my prep, do my research, and then when I was on set, just let it go, and what will be, will be.
You should be proud of that. You should be proud of that, and I will be thankful for that, because, my God, this is like a stunning and stimulating film to watch, and I need more of that in my life. I'm going to say congratulations on everything you've accomplished on The Brutalist and everything coming your way in the future. I can't wait to see that Christmas movie now.
Oh, yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. Great cast.
Thank you for joining me for a Ladies' Night chat. Come back soon.
Thank you very much. What a lovely night.